Okay, so this is the third video to simplifying rational expressions, and we will work on an example. So we had 2x squared minus 13x minus 24 divided by 3x squared minus 17x minus 56. And we want to simplify this equation, this expression, and also find its domain. And so we'll start with the numerator. We will factor it by grouping, and then we can go on into the denominator and find their common factors. So we want to find an a and a b that when you multiply them together, they give you negative 24 times 2. Negative 24 because that's our constant term, and 2 because that's the coefficient, the leading coefficient. Okay? And so we also want to find the a and b that when adding them together you get negative 13, which is the coefficient of x. And of course we want these a's and b's to be equal. So an easy way to find this is by first factoring out our constant term times our leading coefficient. In this case it's negative 48. We can leave it like negative 24 times 2, and we can just factor this out. So we have negative 1, of course, and this can be factored out as 3 times 2 times 2 times 2 for the 24, and then times 2 for this extra 2 right there. And so we want to find a way to group them together that will give us, when we add both numbers, negative 13. And so we know that our negative number must be bigger than our positive number. So whenever we have, so in order to choose which one of the two numbers we want to make negative, it must be the bigger of the two. And so in this case, let's say we want to group 3 and 2, and then we want to group these 3 2's together. So we are left with 6 and 8, and the biggest of the two must be negative. So we have negative 8 and 6. We see that adding them together doesn't give you negative 13, so this must not be right. So let's try having 3 by itself maybe now, and grouping the 4 2's together. If we do that, we get 3 and 16, and the bigger of the two is 16, so we make that negative. So if we add these two together, we get negative 13. Of course, you could keep on going and just list all of them and have your own pattern, so that way you don't get confused on what you already checked and what you didn't. But in this case, we were able to reach the answer pretty quickly, and so we have found our A and our B. And so we now write our expression as 2x squared minus 16x plus 3x minus 24. Some of you might wonder how to know which one to put first, negative 16x or positive 3x. The way you choose which one to put first is whichever has a common factor with a leading coefficient. So for example, in this case, our leading coefficient is 2. So which one has a common factor with 3, with the 2? The 3 or the negative 16? And in this case, it's the negative 16, so that's why we choose it first. We write it first. And so now we just group them, and we're ready to factor our numerator. So we will group these two terms together and our second two terms, and we can factor out the 2x from our first two terms, so we're left with 2x times x minus 8 plus, and here we can factor out a 3, so plus 3 times x minus 8. We combine the 2x and the 3, and we are left with 2x plus 3 times x minus 8. And we have successfully factored our numerator. Now let's do the same procedure for the denominator. So we want to find a and b that when multiplied you get negative 56 times 3, and when added you get negative 17. So in this case, to factor out 56, we get that it's 7 times 8, so that's 2 times 2 times 2, and then we have our 3. And of course the negative 1 since it's a negative. In this case, we see that a plus b is negative 2, so just like in the last case, our the bigger of the two will be a negative of the two factors. So let's start with a little bit maybe more order than before, and we can begin just by taking 7 and then grouping this all together. So 2 times 2 times 2, that's 8, times 3, 24, and we make the bigger of the two negative. And we find that, lucky guess I guess, 7 minus 24, that is negative 17, and we have found it. Of course, if we hadn't found it, we will just keep going until we did, and until we used up all the factors we have. So we have found that a is equal to 7 and b is equal to negative 24, or however you want to put it. So we have 3x squared, and which one do we put first? The negative 24, since it has a common factor with 3. So negative 24x plus 7x minus 56. We group them. We group the first two terms and the second two terms together. And we can factor out a 3x from the first, and we get 3x times x minus 8 plus, and we can factor out a 7 from our second two terms. We are left with 7 times x minus 8. So now we can just combine this into 3x plus 7 times x minus 8, and that is the factors, those are the factors of our denominator. Very well, now we have factored our numerator and denominator, and we are ready to simplify the rational expression. So we found that our numerator was 2x plus 3 times x minus 8, and our denominator was 3x plus 7 times x minus 8. So as we see, there is a common factor in both of them, which is, a common factor, which is x minus 8. And so we can cancel that out and get 2x plus 3 over 3x plus 7. And that's our answer for the simplified portion. So we go back and we say that that's 2x plus 3 over 3x plus 7. And now our domain. So as you may recall, our x is undefined, our y is undefined when x is a 0 of the denominator, because you cannot divide by 0. So we want to state in our domain that those x's are kind of impossible or undefined in this case. So the zeros of our denominator are when 3x plus 7 is equal to 0, and when x minus 8 is equal to 0. And so here we find that x is equal to negative 7 over 3 and x is equal to 8. So this is our domain when any x except these two. So we go back to here, our domain, and state that x cannot be equal to negative 7 over 3 or 8. And we are done.